All right, everybody, thank you for showing up as we wrap up Open Source Security Con Day 1 and only. My name is Helen Woeste. I work for the Open Source Technology Improvement Fund. We do security audits for open source projects during the day, but today my talk is going to be over a recipe for building community. In the past year, OSTIF has taken steps to start building out a community to get people more involved, create advocates for what we do ourselves. And I wanted to present kind of a process that I have been using in order to do that for those who are potentially interested in building their own community or are in the midst of being a part of one or perhaps in charge of one. So this should be covering a lot of really good questions to ask ourselves while we work in community. That said, those of us who cook know that you can't actually mess with a recipe. When you bake, you cannot touch or mess with any of the stuff. However, it doesn't really make for a good comparison here. So I'm using Great British Bake Off because what I'm going to offer you today is a recipe that you can customize to your community in order to get the result that you're looking for. So while I understand that you cannot improvise a baking recipe, the Great British Bake Off is just a better comparison for what we're doing here. And I think as a TV show, it is an incredible representation of what good community looks like. Just to get a sense of this room of men here, how many of you know the Great British Bake Off? Okay, enough so that this is going to work. And those of you who don't, this is what you need to know. It is a British baking competition television show of amateurs. So exclusively applicants from across the United Kingdom who are not professional bakers are invited to this tent every summer to bake. And it has created a huge fandom, if you will. But I was thinking about it and I was like, I think the reason people love this is because it's a good community for all of these reasons. And so we are going to use the Great British Bake Off as our kind of keystone of what we're going to do to build, to bake, I should say, our community. Oh, sorry. Here we go. These are the recipe steps. You can use these in combination, however you would like, whatever stage you're in your community building, but this is in order of how I developed and started working on creating a community for OSTIF. Those of us in security know that we're kind of niche. We're a little weird. This is the first year of the Open Source Security Con, so that's pretty, we just don't have enough of a big connection to other things in the industry that it can be hard to get people to join. So that was my goal with building this community. So, on your marks, get set, bake. First step, you have to plan this out. If you're someone who would like to have a community and doesn't yet, I beg you, please, why? Please answer the question, what would make your community or the community you're trying to set up any different than the ones that already exist? You need to have a reason that would bring people in and make them interested in this. So my first suggestion is seeing if you have it already. Reach out to cohorts, to coworkers, to collaborators in your industry, to people who already use your stuff and say, do you guys want to work on this? See who is already interested in helping you develop this so you are not taking on this as a single individual person, because I guarantee you it's not sustainable. So my recommendation to start a community is basically find out who is already in it and begin planning. You got to work together and start those steps together to begin what you're getting into, frankly. You got to reflect on your boundaries, and then you're going to move forward into how to push those boundaries. So to premise your work is to, having planned and thought about what the goals with your community is, you're going to work backwards. What are the steps that you need as a group of individuals interested in making a community? What do you need to get to where your goal is, your mission is with your community? Whether that's how do we get people contributing, code or otherwise? Is that how do we get people telling us, talking to us about things? How do we get to opening up to a wider space for communications? You have to start, and I recommend working backwards. Knowing what your goal is, and then seeing where you are, and then saying, how do I see ourselves getting there? I recommend heavily we're centralizing around data and content. When you have a community, it's like cool to hang out with people, but unless you are offering people something that makes them want to talk to each other, such as content and data, they cannot get anything else. You're just starting a social club. So my recommendation with a community is to find data and content that is A, automated or repeatable, or B, at least novel and interesting that gets people attracted to what you are trying to offer them. This is unfortunately the worst step, and I'm saying this from experience. You gotta start being annoying. This is when you get involved, you talk to people, you attract people. In order to, this is being said a lot these days, but in order to have community, you have to be community, meaning you can't just assume that people are gonna start showing up to your events or your webinars or your conferences without having engaged with them. So I'm suggesting that to find people, you go meet people, and that's how you're going to recruit and campaign, bringing in things like starting social media campaigns or email campaigns. However it is that you decide that your community is going to best be gathered or connected or reached out to, that's what you do, and you get really good at it. Two kind of little parts of this. Obviously, you have to create content and data and generate it. So again, I recommend anything that can be automated, taking steps and requirements off of yourself to generate content. It sounds really cool to be like, oh, I'm gonna put a blog out every week. It is so much work and it will not happen. I heavily recommending finding parts of your workflow or things about your community that are easily automated in order to be generated and put out with your community so that you don't have to be doing that with your day job and your community building. And then the other thing is, I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say the reason we get involved in community is relationships. We want to meet people. We want to get things out of relationships. So the way that you can be an even better community builder is to connect people to each other. And that goes back to my slide about campaigning. That's how you meet people and say, hey, I know someone in this project, you know someone in that project, let's connect. You got to bring people together in a way that feels natural and normal, and then you become their connection and the reason that they're together. So I heavily emphasize that part of community is not just like offering content or data or conferences, but the connections that you can help people make that they didn't even know that they needed. Those of us who know about the Paul Hollywood handshake, I'm so sorry, I could not find a single GIF of it, but instead I have 3 of him being very nice. Encouraging people in open source seems kind of redundant. It's like, oh, we're all needing encouragement. None of us are getting encouraged for this. But when you're creating a community, the nicest thing you can do and the easiest and quickest thing you can do is offer people support. How can I help? You're doing great. What do we need to do? And create opportunities to see yourself become redundant. You should want to hand off whatever role you're doing in your community to another person. Obviously, not right away, but at some point, your goal should be, how do I make myself redundant so that someone else wants my role? And it's as easy as possible for them to hand it off to the next person. Thinking about the chain of ownership for roles in the community. How do you get people involved and make that next generation of your community one that is just as ready and educated as you were when you got started, just making it better for the next generation. And a note too, when I say generation, I do not mean age-wise. I mean the next generation of people who are in your community or running your project, age is not a factor. I just mean the next wave of people. And I think that's really important when we talk about mentorships and opportunities. Age should not be a part of this, gender, globalness, like we should be offering community to everybody at every level. Automation is a great way to do that, as well as recordings and posting recordings. I did forget to mention that when I talked about creating content. A great way to do that is to record any meetings or content and post them online for people to read later. Not only is that accessibility, but it's also much more helpful for people who want to participate who are not in the same time zone and able to attend events maybe. So encouraging through both relationships and metaphysical relationships, but also in terms of the actual digital content and data that you're providing to your community. And kind of the scariest part about starting a community is the idea of failure, that you're going to throw a party and no one's going to show up. And you have to do it. You have to embrace failure as a part of this process because it tells you what's going on and what's wrong. The worst thing you can do is try to start a community, not get the turnout you want, and then stop. You have to keep working and trying again and adapting and seeing what the people you are trying to connect with want. Because it's possible that they all are right there on the other side, just waiting for you to find the right way to connect with them. And if you try a thing and it doesn't work, giving up means that you're denying all of those people the opportunity to do what you want them to, which is to connect with you and talk with you and eventually hopefully contribute and possibly take your role. So I encourage you to try everything and realize that you can, in fact, just quit something that doesn't work. If people don't seem to respond to a campaign on Twitter, don't do it. If your click-throughs or the click-through rate is really low, clearly something's wrong. So take failure as feedback instead of discouragement and keep trying, because the worst thing you can do is stop showing up when it comes to community. The more you show up every time, the more people will come. Nadia won, I believe, season 6, and she had this really beautiful quote at the end where she realized basically, of course, the power to do anything was within her the whole time. But I think that's really important, going back to my point about failure in community building. You have to believe that you can and you will find the people that you are looking for and be able to accomplish the mission that you set out. Because again, if there's no mission with this community, if there's no point or goal, then you're just having a really great social group, and that's awesome. But particularly for this talk, I'm talking about how do we form and create community in open source that then contributes back to us as individuals, professionally and personally, with regards to open source. So we just have to keep trying. And we know as open source people who run our own stuff, sometimes it's just up to us. We just have to decide we're going to do it and make it happen. So I can and I will. Before I close out, I do have in the slide a bunch of resources for those who are looking to build out community. The two I recommend the most, the first is Smart Brevity, which is a great book for learning how to do PR writing. If you are not a strong writer, if you're not confident about putting out content, that book will help. And the second is the Community Toolbox, that webpage from the University of Kansas. I cannot emphasize enough, that should be behind a paywall. It is so good. If you are like, I really need step-by-step instructions for how to do something for a community, that website has it. So there are tons of resources out there if you're looking to grow your community or even just start one. My experience the past year has been nothing but positive, even with the failures, which I will freely admit have happened. But I really have been so grateful to get to join open source in the past couple years, and I'm really excited to see where OSTIF's security community can go in the next year. So I hope this helps those of you who are looking to do the same thing as I was a year ago, and